So over the past few weeks, I've got to tell you that one of my favorite things about this whole sabbatical deal was getting to visit other churches around, because I don't usually get to do that for obvious reasons. And so I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. In the last few weeks, I have been to Durant, to Pauls Valley, to Highland and Tecumseh, where I think I got Macy's last pregnant time at church before there was a baby. I got to go to Memorial Road in Oklahoma City, watched our area-wide on online streaming, and think that I saw Thorne's best sermon since he's been here. Really enjoyed that a lot. Went to Medill and to Westside and Searcy, and last Wednesday evening to Stratford. And so have been kind of all over, seen a lot of people I don't usually get to see in those settings. A lot of very surprised preachers when they looked out in the audience and saw me sitting there, wondering what was going on. But it was just a good time. But as I've already mentioned to you, there's something about coming back home. There's something about being in the place that is home now for us and has been for about 7.5 years now. And it's a unique thing that when I tried to think of it through a biblical lens, I kept finding myself drawn to Paul. Because Paul talks a lot about the idea of longing for these different churches that he would go to visit. And Paul, kind of unlike us, who so many of us here have called Southwest home for a long time, and a lot of you a whole lot longer than me, Paul had kind of a lot of homes, different places where he had been a part of the planting of the church or of the growth of the church. And I think he viewed each of those places in a special way that we can see in his letters. And so I thought this morning we will look at some of Paul's longing for the church in different places and what we can see in the importance of the church and what we may long for in the church as well. Because we live in a time that tries to downplay the importance of the church. We've talked about this idea before, but there are a lot of people out there that don't mind the idea of Jesus, although they may not want all of his teachings. That may not mind the idea of Christianity, although they probably take issue with us on one thing or another. But there are an awful lot of people out there that feel like, well, I can do Christianity and I can follow Jesus, but I don't really need the church. And I just don't find that to be an option. I think we have convinced ourselves, especially in our culture, that it is. But biblically speaking, I don't see anything that would make me think that. So as we think about Paul and his longing for the church, we'll see his longing in his own words in several different places. First of all, in Romans chapter 1. In verses 1 and 12, he says this to the church at Rome: "For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you, that is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine." Paul's longing for the church there at Rome is that there is a mutual encouragement that goes on in church. And I was thinking today of, I come back home and here in this first service that I'm with you, I get to hear a prayer from Alan. I get to hear thoughts from the cross from Mark. And I will tell you, and I don't know if you have picked up on this when Mark speaks, Mark says the Christ more than anyone I know. And every time I read something about the Christ in Scripture now, I hear it in Mark's voice. I love that there is this mutual encouragement that comes from people that we associate with phrases that they use, with things they care about, with lessons that they have taught. When I think of covenant now, I will probably hear it in David Hendrick's voice, because as he's talked about covenant on Sunday mornings for the last several weeks, there is this emphasis that comes from people who mutually encourage us. And I am an encouragement, I hope, to you, and you are an encouragement to me, just even seeing your faces out there today. We have this encouragement that comes. And Paul, when he is away from these different churches, wants that encouragement that comes with being there. And if you are not a part of a church family, you're missing that. You are missing, in a very discouraging and polarized and negative world, the encouragement that comes with being with a church family. And I will tell you, in visiting these other churches, I've got little pieces of it, because there are people in each of these places I know and maybe sometimes haven't seen in a while, but there's something about the encouragement that comes with being with the family here at Southwest. And Paul sees that there in the church at Rome. He continues in verse 13, "I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that I have often intended to come to you, but thus far have been prevented, in order that I may reap some harvest among you as well as among the rest of the Gentiles. Now, I will tell you, as I was thinking about this today, the fact that I have gone through 3 weeks and 6 days of sabbatical with a voice that was just fine, and then suddenly when I woke up this morning, and by the way, urgent care has told me I am no longer contagious, but if you don't want to hug me or shake my hand, I'm not offended. I thought to myself, it's like I'm trying to be kept from being here to talk today. Paul has all these things that are keeping him away, but he sees the possibility of harvest that is coming. There is this growth that comes with the church. And I think Paul is speaking in both ways in this term of harvest. In kind of the evangelical way we may think of just growth of numbers, but also the fact that as we are mutually encouraging each other, there is this harvest of growth within each of us. We are not the same people that we were many years ago. I was at Westside in Searcy last week. I had gone for the funeral of one of our elders who had been there. On Sunday morning, sitting in the service, and I will tell you, I don't usually anticipate being encouraged by announcements. It's a running joke with me and the elders here of how much I don't really care for announcements, especially when there's a lot of them. And as I'm sitting there and they're starting to do the announcements at Westside, I noticed the guy who gets up to make the announcement about needing teachers. Dusty, it's everywhere. It's not just here. He gets up to make the announcement about needing teachers. And I realize as he gets up there, this is a guy who was a senior in the first class that I had in youth ministry. This was a guy that the first time I met him, I thought, this is the cockiest teenager I have ever met in my life. He's so full of himself. And then I began to realize he actually is not as arrogant as I think he is. Maybe there's a little touch of it. He's incredibly confident. He's good at everything, and he's just kind of grown that way. And I noticed as so many other people in the youth group would defer to him on things, and it drove me crazy for a while until I got to know him. And then I realized this is a neat guy. And I watched him get up and give an announcement about needing teachers, and I thought, and my wife said it to me as we sat there, this is one of the best announcements about needing teachers I've ever heard. Did you know an announcement about needing teachers could be good? I sat there and just amazed by it. And I thought, this kid has grown so much from that first devotional that I was there and thought, here's the cockiest kid in the world. And I wish I could take credit, but I don't really think I can. There is a growth that comes in us as we are around the church. This is a guy from when I met him at age 18 to today has consistently been a part of every church he's been involved in. And now he is a deacon there and working with education, and he has grown. For each of us, there's this opportunity for growth within the church. Then he continues on. He says, I'm under obligation to both Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. So I'm eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. There is an excitement with Paul about the gospel. And it's interesting to me that he is teaching it to a group of people who have heard it before. And there's always that possibility when you're here, especially you've been here for a long time, that you're going to hear something you've heard before. Not because it's an old outline I've pulled out or something like that, but how many times can you hear lessons on the same things and just kind of lull yourself into, well, I really don't need to listen to this today. And yet Paul has this eagerness about the gospel, this excitement about the gospel. What if we were excited about the gospel today? When I came in with this voice, there was more than one of you that said, were you yelling too much watching that game last night? And I really wasn't. I think I may have yelled once. But I get excited about those games like you guys do about your games. Or you get excited about the things in this life, in this world that excite us. What if we had excitement about the gospel? Paul has an excitement about sharing the gospel with others, that he just wants to be around the church family to do that. And then later in the book, in chapter 15, and by the way, we won't look at chapter 16, but if you ever want to be encouraged, look at a list of people who have just had an impact on Paul and on the church in Rome. But back in chapter 15, he says this, now, since I no longer have any room for works in these regions, he's been talking about the other places he's been that have kept him from getting to Rome where he wants to go. And since I have longed for many years to come to you, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain and to be helped in my journey there by you once I have enjoyed your company for a while. He wants to enjoy their company for a while. He wants a time of fellowship. And although the time that we worship is important, and it's why we're here, the time we take the Lord's Supper together and remember is important, and it's why we're here, those times where we can just be together in fellowship are important and valuable too. One of my favorite times when we went over to Cersei for the funeral last weekend was to sit down in the home of friends and play cards for a couple hours. Church friends that we've known for years and years, and just have that time of fellowship together. Fellowship is such a valuable thing, and it's not just those things in the bulletin that are fellowship events. We have time together as church family where we're in each other's homes, and we're out together at restaurants, or we're out together in an event of some kind, and we have these moments of fellowship. And Paul, who so many times has his freedom taken away from him, just yearns for that fellowship with other Christians. Then in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, and it's interesting to me, after a book with an awful lot of where they're falling short and the things they're doing that don't look all that Christian, when he begins to bring things together toward the end of the book, in verse 7, he says this, "For I do not want to see you now just in passing. I hope to spend some time with you, if the Lord permits." Paul wants quality time with the church. Now, I will have to admit to you, I have locked this building up more times than I would care to admit, because we have been here for a while, and sometimes it's because I'm talking to someone. Sometimes it's because my wife is talking to someone. I would tell you it's more times of that than the other. But we're here for a long time, and we're turning off lights, and we're locking doors and all that stuff. And sometimes I get frustrated because I don't always want to be the last one here. I want to go on and do the other things of the day. And sometimes I forget. This isn't just a box to check. This isn't just a time that we're here and we go as quickly as we can, and we're trying to, I jokingly, at one of the services we were at visiting, where it was kind of long, and it was a service that started later than ours to begin with, which I'm pretty sure is unbiblical, but I was thinking to myself, it's going to take us a while to get to Ted's, and all the other churches are already going to be there, and I forget, that's not what it's about. Can we just spend not rushed quality time with each other? Not feel like it's a thing where we've got to get to the next thing. We've got to be somewhere else. Can we just be together? And for a lot of you, I don't need to preach that to you because I see you there when I'm locking the door. But for some of us, we're so quick to get in and out, and we wonder why we feel disconnected. There has to be quality time spent with each other. And again, not just here. It's not just about our time here in the building. Are we spending time with our church family outside of here? Are we spending time talking and sharing, encouraging one another throughout the week? Then in Philippians, and the church at Philippi is one that, as you read through this book, Paul clearly loves this church, but also wants more for them than the things they're struggling with. In the middle of the book, in chapter 2, verse 19, he says this, "I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, so that I too may be cheered by news of you. For I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned about your welfare. I hope, therefore, to send him just as soon as I see how it will go with me, and I trust in the Lord that shortly I myself may come also." He has a concern for the welfare of the church. And I hope we do too. I hope we look at one another and we see the things that are struggles. We see the moments that are difficult for us emotionally, moments of loss, moments where we need encouragement, or moments where we can celebrate together, that we are concerned for one another and our welfare. And Paul is so concerned that even when he realizes he can't get to them as quickly as he wants to send someone else just to make sure they're okay. How often do we ask each other, "How you doing?" And the answer is fine, good, and you just kind of carry on? Are we willing to share what's really going on with each other? And we're probably guilty on both sides of that. You probably ask the question, "How you doing?" and you're really not looking for a real answer. You're just making conversation. Or maybe sometimes you say good because you don't want to admit what's really going on. But are we really concerned with the welfare of one another? And I know that that's not going to happen with all 300 of us. I know we're not going to have that level of connection with everybody, but you need that level of connection with somebody that can really look at you and know what's going on in your life and ask you how you're doing and be concerned. Let's be concerned about each other and our welfare. And then the church at Thessalonica. In chapter 2 of that 1 Thessalonians, starting in verse 17, Paul says, "Since we were torn away from you, brothers, for a short time, in person, not in heart, we endeavored the more eagerly and with great desire to see you face to face." And by the way, our reason for being torn away sometimes is not the same as Paul's. But if you have been there, I see something different when you return. When health has torn you away for a while and you come back, I can see the excitement you have about being back with your church family. When several years ago, COVID tore us all away for several weeks, and we finally got back together with our masks on for a couple weeks, even though we couldn't see the smiles, we knew they were there. And then when we finally got to take those things off, the excitement that came with being back together, he is torn away, but wants to be back with them. We endeavored the more eagerly and with great desire to see you face to face, because we wanted to come to you. I, Paul, again and again, but Satan hindered us. And I will tell you, by the way, when a generation of people is convinced that I can be a Christian and I can follow Jesus, but I don't need the church, I believe we can say once again, Satan has hindered us. He wants you to convince you can do this. He wants to convince you you can do this on your own. That's not how it works. We've talked about the vine and the branches. We've talked about the church body and everyone being a part. Satan will convince you that's not what it is, and Paul says it's otherwise. Therefore, in chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, he says, "Therefore, when we could bear it no longer." Have you ever felt the need to connect with your church or family so much that you could bear disconnection no longer? And if you haven't, I think you're missing out on what church family is supposed to be. But if you have, you know exactly what Paul's talking about. When we could bear it no longer, we were willing to be left behind at Athens alone, and we sent Timothy, our brother and God's co-worker in the gospel of Christ, to establish and exhort you in your faith, that no one be moved by these afflictions, for you yourselves know that we are destined for this. He gave Timothy to establish and exhort, to strengthen their faith. We are stronger together. There are so many different ways to show that imagery, but we know we are stronger together. David, our son, is visiting a friend from high school who lives in San Francisco this weekend. He sent me a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. I was mildly jealous. I've always wanted to see it in person, but I think to myself every time I look at that bridge, and I'm sure David Hendricks could spend a half hour explaining it to all of us later if we care, but there are these cables that go up, and they're intertwined, and they spiral around each other, and I've watched things on the Learning Channel about it, and I still don't get it. But all of those cables are done in such a way that they can bear the weight of that bridge and of the traffic that goes over that bridge for decades. And the vibrations and the earthquakes and all of those things is just those cables. And if you were to de-wrap those cables, they're really not incredibly large. And it might freak you out a little bit to think it's just these little cables are the things that are holding us up. But when you wrap them all together and use them in the way that they were engineered to be used, it works. We individually, against an entire world, feel pretty small, and we should, because that would be too difficult for us. But together with the church family, strengthening one another in our faith, we can be the people that God has designed us to be, to take his gospel and his word to the world around us. Continuing in chapter 3, verse 9, he says, "For what thanksgiving can we return to God for you, for all the joy that we feel for your sake before our God, as we pray most earnestly night and day, that we may see you face to face and supply what is lacking in your faith." All the joy that we feel for you, that we can supply what is lacking. He is longing for a church that fills the gaps. There are places where I am weak and you are strong. And there are places where you are weak and I am strong. There are talents that you have that I do not. There are talents that I have that you don't. But together, we are able to be the body of Christ in the way that it was designed. And if any of you are missing, it is noticeable. And if lots of you are missing, it is very noticeable. There are this week, because of fall breaks going on and all that, there are many gaps in the pews right now. And I think to myself, I know who's supposed to be there. I know who always sits there. When you are missing, it is noticed. we fill in the gaps that others leave behind. When I think of filling the gaps, when I was a junior in high school, our football team was really good. They won the state championship. They were great. We switched conferences the next year. In my senior year, it was similar people, but because they were playing much better teams, the team was awful. And they were, I think, 3-8 by the time the season was over. In our homecoming game, pulled ahead with 19 seconds left. The crowd was so excited. It had been a rough year. I think we might have won a game or two at that point, and just felt like finally, at least on homecoming, things are going well. Sorry, Oklahoma State people, I shouldn't have brought up this story. Finally, on homecoming, things are going well. 19 seconds left, pull ahead, feel like everything is right with the world, kick it off, and the guy runs it back for a touchdown. And the football team, when they were watching the tape the next Monday, literally tape at that time, by the way, when they're watching it the next Monday, they realized there was a guy on the kickoff coverage who was not where he was supposed to be. And he knew it as soon as he saw it and felt awful. Those guys all have those things that they're supposed to do, positions they're supposed to be in, because they're filling the gaps. And when one is missing, it's a disaster. Paul understands that each of us in the church family, we fill the gaps for one another. And then back in the book of Philippians, we'll bring it together here. Philippians chapter 1, verses 25 and 26. Paul says, "Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you again." His longing for the church is joy. I hear so many stories about people who have hurt because of something that's had it happen at church. There are books written about that now. It's all about deconstructing faith. If you've ever heard that phrase and wonder what it's about. People have been hurt somewhere along the way, and maybe some of you have experienced that, where someone in a church has said something to you, not realizing most likely what kind of impact that has had. I've shared stories with people in the last week of things like that, where someone said something in passing, didn't realize how hard it hit, and people walk away from church over things like that. I've been around people who have said it's hard to go to church for any number of reasons, just emotional things they have in their lives, their history with church, whatever it may be. And I will tell you that church is not supposed to be that. Church is supposed to be a place where there is joy. Church is supposed to be a group of people that God has put together for his kingdom that is a place of joy. And if you don't feel joy within the church, let me tell you, it is here. It is here, and maybe you have not found it yet, or maybe we have not done a good job of communicating and showing that to you, but know that this is a place of joy. As good as a month of rest has been, it is a time of joy to be back with you again. It is a joyful time to know that this is our church family that loves us and cares for us, and that we feel the same for you. This morning, Paul says it this way in the verses that precede: "For me to live is Christ and to die is gain." Life is good and the church is good, but we know that this life, there is something that is beyond it that is so much better. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. Church is necessary. It's a necessity. But there is something better that is coming. We are here to prepare ourselves for the goal and the reward that is ahead. And this morning, if you don't feel like this is home, let me tell you it can be. But more than that, if you don't feel like this is home, let me tell you there's a home that is coming that is so far beyond what this is. God has prepared a place for you. He wants you to be with him, and he wants you to live with him forever. If you have not followed him, let this be the beginning of your walk with the church family. Let this be the day that you confess his name, that you're baptized into him. And then when you go other places and you come back here, it's home. Or if today you are back here, you're visiting and you don't have a home, or maybe this was your home a long time ago, but you haven't felt at home in a lot of years, let this be the day that you come back home. Let this be the day that God sees you in a distance and runs to you because he wants to be with you. If there's some way we can help you to come home today, please come while we stand and sing.